Yeah, hurry up. Today's lecture was brought to you by watermelon flavored Waterloo. It's so good. All right. So let's continue to talk about all things related to stress. So the last time that we were here, we were talking about Hans Selye's work on the general adaptation syndrome. And so this is basically what he characterized as 3 different stages. So we had our alarm reaction, where your body basically realizes that you are now dealing with a threat. In addition to that, so we have our alarm reaction where you basically register that something is threatening. You have resistance where your sympathetic nervous system basically starts to mobilize resources to fight or run away from that stressor. And as you can see in this figure, here's what some of those different things are. And then finally, after fighting that stress, you enter a period of exhaustion. Your energy and your resources are depleted. You are absolutely going to need some time to rest and recover. That is not only true for psychological or emotional stress, it is also true for physical stress. And it is why I weightlift every other day. I give my body time to recover. And if I'm still super duper sore, I take another day, because my body needs time to recover from that physical stress. Now, there are some different ways that we can choose to cope with stress. Some people do choose to withdraw. So they tend to withdraw from the things that are kind of stressing them out. I know during certain periods of my life, for example, I mentioned 2 years ago was a very, very stressful time for me, for ultimately very trivial reasons, but people are going to feel how they're going to feel. But I called people a lot less. I spent time with people less. And I don't know if that was something I was consciously choosing to do, but it could be argued that I was trying to conserve my energy and conserve my resources. The problem with this is that sometimes this can lead to a sense of paralysis and you feel stuck. So for example, so sometimes in class, for example, and maybe not this class, but maybe you've had this experience in other classes, you start falling behind or you start getting stressed out and you forget to turn in homework assignments or you fail to turn in assignments. And all of a sudden, you've got to play catch up. And so the fear of having to do all of that extra work and play catch up can be really, really paralyzing for some people. And so for some people, it's actually easier to continue doing nothing versus doing the work needed to catch up and pull oneself up and get a better grade in the class. I know that this is something that my sister actually struggled with when she was in college. She really liked to skip class, and then she would miss out on homework assignments, miss out on lectures, she wouldn't do the readings, and then her professors would give her an opportunity to catch up and fix what she missed. And that was scary to her, and it was actually, in her mind, better to continue doing nothing than to step up and try to get back on track. So some people do prefer to withdraw, but it can create a sense of paralysis where you're not really sure what you should do next. Now, other people may choose when they're stressed to seek out and provide support. So one of the things that I do if things are stressful at home or if things are stressful at work is that I spend time with my friends. I talk to my friends. I ask them for their thoughts on things. And this is what is referred to as a tend and befriend response. Now, again, I'm going to be really clear. I'm about to refer to this as a gender binary, and I apologize in advance for this. Obviously, it's more complicated than a gender binary. Research has kind of shown, though, that basically due to how we are kind of socialized, People who identify as men often will tend to be socialized to take a withdrawal route. Women or people who identify as women are often going to be more socialized towards that tend and befriend response. Now, to be clear, if you identify as female and you choose to withdraw from a situation, I am not telling you that's odd or abnormal. There's going to be some variability here, and odds are pretty good. Most of us tend to do a combination of both of these things at different times. But by and large, men tend to withdraw, women tend to have more social support, and they have social networks. And actually, one of the things that I've been hearing more about is that men need friendships, and we don't really do a very good job of normalizing friendships in men, at least not very, very deep ones where they can share ideas and stuff like that. And oftentimes that ends up hurting them psychologically because of that. So let's start talking about stress and its effects on health. So tell me if this sounds familiar. I'm going to share a story and you tell me if this sounds familiar to you. I have allergies. So I generally find that because my immune system is super duper overactive, that I tend to not get sick very much. I maybe, like most people, get a cold maybe about once a year, maybe twice if it's a bad year, and occasionally I struggle with my sinuses, but I am very, very rarely sick. However, I do kind of notice a very interesting pattern. So I'll be working really hard for a semester, either in college or graduate school or here as a professor. And then I'll get an opportunity to take a break. Maybe it's the holidays, maybe it's spring break. And then I get sick. How many of you have had something like that happen where you're working really hard, you're not really getting sick all that much, and then all of a sudden the semester ends, you get an opportunity to relax, and boom, you get sick? Because that happens to me a lot. Yep. Did it? Yeah. We're not even at a break yet.
But I was like, I'm gonna take this weekend and relax.
And then you got sick.
Yep.
And then your body was like, I'm make you relax.
This is not the day we decided I would relax.
So one of the things that we do find is that psychological states actually do affect the functioning of the immune system. And this is a special field called psychoneuroimmunology. Isn't that a long word to say? So of course we have the psycho referring to mental states, neuro, which means that there is some component of the brain that is being involved here, and then immunology. So this does affect the immune system. So we're constantly looking at the interaction between our psychological states, our brain, and how all of that works together to affect our immune system. So let's talk a little bit about how the immune system normally handles different types of intruders. I'm going to talk about a few of these. Your book is going to go into more detail, and I would look those up because I do have questions about things like lymphocytes on your test. So we have a few different cells that are a part of your body's immune system that are basically designed to help fight invaders. So we have what are called our lymphocytes. These are basically your white blood cells. And we have what are called B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. We call them B and T because of where they come from. So B lymphocytes come from the bone marrow. T lymphocytes come from the thymus gland. And each of these has a very specific role. So B lymphocytes are largely to kill bacteria. T lymphocytes kill viruses, and they also kill cancer cells. So cancer cells are basically abnormal mutations in cells. And let's be really clear, these things are going to happen. So your body will occasionally make something that mutates. And normally, under good circumstances, your lymphocytes are strong enough to overpower that. What we often tend to find is that as you get older and some of these abnormalities rack up, the lymphocytes have a harder time fighting that. And because of that, that's why it's very, very rare to see cancer in a young adult, and you tend to see it more the older that you get. So we have these. We also have what is called a microphage. So when we talk about phages, we're talking about eating, nom, 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 nom. If it helps you remember it, just think of nom, nom, nom when you think of a microphage. A microphage is basically designed to eat invaders and debris and dead cells. So that can include things like funguses, that can include things like random amoeba that somehow get into the water, things like that. And then one thing that is not on this slide, but I will kind of talk about, I'm going to write this on the board. Hopefully you can see it. We have what are called NK cells. NK stands for natural killer. And they are also designed to basically kill invaders, cancer cells, and things like that. So this is what normally happens if a virus or a bacteria gets into your body. Your lymphocytes and macrophages and natural killer cells are basically going to go in and fight it. Now, if you have something like allergies, or if you have something like an autoimmune disease like lupus or multiple sclerosis, I think is argued as an autoimmune disease. If you have something like Hashimoto's disease, these are cases that we know as autoimmune disorders. This is a case where your immune system works too well and is oversensitive and is actually hurting healthy tissue. So when you have an allergy, allergies typically don't hurt healthy tissues, but under certain cases, if you have an allergy to something like bee stings and you get stung by a bee, your body is basically going to overreact to the point where you could potentially go into anaphylactic shock or even die if you don't get something like an EpiPen or something like that. So your body basically becomes oversensitive and overreacts to stimuli. I'm allergic to dust, and unfortunately, dust is everywhere. Okay, so here's the thing though. When you're stressed out, your energy is a finite resource. You do not have enough energy to do everything. Your body is a finite resource. And so when you are stressed, more energy is spent engaging in that fight or flight response than to helping lymphocytes or creating more lymphocytes or creating more macrophages or natural killer cells. So what ends up happening, and again, your book will go into this in more detail, we know that when your body is busy fighting stress, when your fight or flight system is activated, your body is going to spend a lot of time getting ready to either get you to fight or run away from something. It's going to send blood to your muscles. It's going to increase your heart rate. It is going to stop digestion. All of that takes energy. And if you're using all of this energy to fight stress, that means that your immune system is not getting the energy it needs to fight invaders. And what we typically tend to find, as you can kind of see here, and I'm not overly fond of this graph because it jumps from 0 and truncates and basically jumps to 25. But here, you're kind of looking at a psychological stress index on our x-axis. Higher numbers mean more stress. You can see that as somebody's reported psychological stress increases, the greater the likelihood that they have a cold. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the effect of stress on fighting terminal diseases like AIDS and cancer. Really quick though, I'm not going to spend too much time on those. One thing I will mention very, very quickly though, stress does not cause cancer. Cancer is when your body's cells mutate, and this happens all the time. You're just not aware of it because when you're younger, if those mutated cells pop up, the immune system is able to destroy them. So I want to be clear. If you end up getting cancer, don't be like, I should have managed my stress better. It doesn't cause cancer. But if you find that you get a cancer diagnosis, that would be a really good time to start learning some stress management techniques because it can help you fight it better. And similar results have been found with things like AIDS. So for a lot of people, good stress management techniques have been shown to potentially slow the progression from HIV into full-blown AIDS and to slow down that progression. So I am not telling you that if you get things like this that you deserved it because you didn't manage your stress. We all have stress in our lives. Nobody here has a stress-free life. And if you tell me that you do have a stress-free life, I am going to remind you that Christmas is coming up. And that is stressful for everybody, even if it's a good form of stress. Everybody has a life filled with stress. These kind of things will happen. Please do not blame yourself if you find yourself with one of these diseases. But there is one disease that is very strongly linked to stress, and that is coronary heart disease. Yay! No, not yay. Coronary heart disease is an instance where the blood vessels begin to close. So here is a normal blood vessel. Here is a case where somebody clearly has a case of atherosclerosis. The blood vessels walls are kind of thickening. They're starting to close. You're not getting good blood flow. So this could lead to things like heart attacks. It could potentially lead to things like strokes. It could lead to a variety of different things. And here's the thing. So we talked about this a little bit when we talked about health and eating behavior. Obviously, some of this is going to be linked to choices that you make. Some of this is going to be linked to genetics. If you have a family history of cardiovascular problems in general, that is going to up your risk. But your environment also plays a role. And we know that stress plays a huge role in cardiovascular health. So researchers have actually looked at tax accountants and looked at their heart health at different points in the year. Now, in particular, they looked at the heart health of tax accountants between January and March. Now, why would you want to look at tax accountants at that point in time? It's tax season. So here in the United States, taxes have to be filed by April 15th. And generally, most people start getting their W-2s or 1099s, things that they need to file their taxes at the end of January. So for a lot of accountants and CPAs, tax season is a really, really busy time. I actually work on my community theaters board with somebody who is a tax accountant, and especially in February and March, she's not coming in. She's too busy working with people helping to manage their taxes. And so they look at people during this point in time, and then they look at them again in August. Now, let's be clear. August is usually the time when audits go out. But by and large, most tax accountants are not very busy then. So they looked at the heart health profile of these accountants in these two different time periods. And you could just see by looking at their heart health how much worse it had become during tax season. And it managed to reverse itself and lower itself by August. So we can conclude that stress plays a role here because these people weren't necessarily changing their eating habits drastically. They weren't changing their health behavior habits drastically. This is something happening over a short period of a few months. But it's kind of clear that stress does play a role in heart health. One of the other things that we know that stress can do, it can actually alter your heart rhythm and introduce arrhythmia. And arrhythmias can also be very, very dangerous. Your personality type matters too. Now, there are two types of people in the world. I don't actually believe that there are two types of people in the world, but I think sometimes we have a tendency to oversimplify. So oftentimes you will occasionally hear somebody referred to as having a type A personality. Has anybody here been described as having a type A personality? Okay, Chloe. Anybody else? And like, you know a type A person when you see it. Now I know what you're thinking. Dr. Gilchrist, you seem to be more of a type B personality, and you would be wrong. I am type A and it hurts. I am competitive. I am super driven. I am very impatient, and I've had to learn to be less of a hothead. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I'm especially impatient. Waiting in line at Walmart is the worst thing ever. Now let's be really clear. If the worst thing ever for me is the long line in Walmart, I think I'm doing okay. I think I'm all right and don't have much to complain about. But typically we tend to find that type A personalities tend to be more likely to have heart problems. They tend to be more likely to have things related to heart attacks. They tend to have more high blood pressure. And that's especially true when you compare them to type B people who are very, like, there's no other word to say it, they're really chill. They are chill. They are easygoing, they're relaxed, they're very flexible. And so researchers have always wondered, what is it about type A personalities that make them more prone to these heart issues? Is it because they're competitive? No, not really. Is it because they're driven? I hope not. Can you be both? I am very chill, yet I get easily angered. Yeah, I think it's generally ill-advised to basically categorize yourself into one or two things. Oftentimes, we're going to find that these things tend to exist on a spectrum. So I kind of brought this up last time. I am really good at staying calm and flexible through like the big scary stuff. I am not good with little things. I will lose my mind in traffic. Now, have I ever done road rage? Oh no, but I yell a lot of stuff with the window rolled up because I'm a coward. Because I'm a coward. I'm a huge chicken. So I tend to think of it more as a spectrum. And once we're done with this unit, starting next week, we're going to jump to personality. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. Like, people like to put themselves in boxes, but really, you should think of it as a spectrum rather than I'm pure extrovert, I'm pure introvert. It's why you start hearing more talk about people that are called ambiverts, because most of us are not all extrovert and no introvert, or all introvert and no extrovert. So you can probably be both. But what is it about type A people that make them more prone to these problems? Well, it's the undercurrent of anger. It's the undercurrent of anger that really seems to play a role, those negative emotions. So my impatience often will come from the fact that they are impeding me from my goal. I do not like going to Walmart. I just really like that they have vegan food that I can eat. But when I have to wait in a long line, I want to get out and enjoy the rest of my day. And all these people in line are keeping me from that. You're keeping me from my goal. And so you get a little angry. And it's that undercurrent of anger that really can mess with your body. It alters your blood flow. It alters your heart rhythm. So if you're like me and you occasionally run around with that undercurrent of impatience and irritation and frustration, meditation and yoga, anything that can still your mind, keep you in the present moment, and give you a sense of perspective is a really, really good thing. So how do we cope? I hate to break it to you. You cannot have a stress-free life. Even if you ran away to the woods and said, goodbye, Dr. Gilchrist, I'm going to become a hermit. you'd still have stress in your life. There are two different ways that we can manage it. And these are going to be short answer questions. So I'm glad you're paying attention. I hope you're paying attention. There are two different ways that we can manage it. So we have what's called problem-focused coping. We can basically reduce our stress directly by changing the stressor. So for example, if I'm worried that I'm not getting enough recognition at my job or I'm not getting paid enough, I could very easily try to cope with the problem by drafting a letter, taking it to the dean, and basically being like, here are things that I've done. Here are reasons why I should get a pay raise. I don't actually think I need a pay raise. I'm pretty happy, but I'm giving an example. So maybe you want a promotion at work. Problem-focused coping would basically be you drafting a letter or meeting with your boss and basically being like, here's why I think I should be promoted. Now, that obviously is not necessarily going to guarantee that you get it, but you are at least trying to take control of the situation. Now, oftentimes we're going to find that there are situations that we can't control, or people that we want to try to change and we can't. And when that doesn't happen, we can engage in emotion-focused coping. So we focus on managing our emotional needs instead of changing the problem. So for example, and you can often rely on both of these. These are not necessarily mutually exclusive strategies. So for example, when I was in graduate school, I had lab mates that did not get along with each other and they'd fight all the time. And I got to tell you, that for somebody like me who's a pretty buoyant, happy, everybody should shut up and hug kind of person, for somebody like me, it was really hard to go into that every day and it was draining me. So I tried to focus on the problem. I tried to talk to my lab mates about it. I said, I think the situation here is becoming really, really negative and I'm having a hard time coping with it. And for at least one of my lab mates, it worked. For my other lab mate, he went, well, I'm not going to change my behavior because you're oversensitive. Yeah, here's the problem. But at that point, I can't change that. I have tried to reason, I have tried to explain my ideas, that didn't work. So at that point, I engaged in emotion-focused coping. And folks, I gotta tell you, when you're frustrated with people, I know I said that the catharsis hypothesis doesn't always work, but I gotta tell you, I logged a lot of cardio kickboxing hours with a boxing bag. It helps. Sometimes it helps. But I also went to a therapist. I spent time with friends. I tried to manage the emotions that I felt until the lab basically exploded in a big, giant, rage-filled fight. Yeah, that was fun. That was a long time ago. Wow. So we have these two different things that we can do. We can directly change the stressor, or we can try to focus on our emotional needs. And you can do both of these, but I would be clear, be mindful of which one you're picking. If you're stressed out about this class and you're worried about what you're gonna do on the test, yeah, I would argue that there is an argument to be made for sometimes managing your stressful emotions. But you know what you can do if you're worried about how you're doing in a class? You have a lot of opportunities to directly change the problem. You can study, you can talk to me, you can ask questions. Just focusing on watching Netflix because it makes you feel good, it will help you in the short term, but it's not going to actually fix your problem. So be mindful of that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the different factors that affect how well we actually cope with stress. So one of the first things that we find is that how much control you actually think you have over the environment really, really matters. And a lot of this comes from the work of Martin Seligman and his work on learned helplessness. So I'm going to use the board again. I'm going to drop pictures. Folks, so I'm going to give you a heads up. You are about to see one of the worst drawn dogs you have ever seen. But I'm giving you a heads up because my cognitive psychology class had to watch me draw the weirdest looking goat ever last week. So I want to prepare. I don't have time to draw something artsy. So Seligman's original work is kind of based on a very, very simple sort of setup. So this is what is referred to as a shuttle box procedure. That is a boomerang, not a dog. Yeah, I told you it was a really bad dog. Well, I don't have time to draw a good one. So you have a dog in this shuttle box situation, and the room has basically been partitioned into two different chambers. So you have the side that the dog is on, you have a small little fence, and you have another side. So here's kind of what happens in the standard shuttle box procedure. So the floor on this side of the chamber is wired with electricity. So this dog, if he doesn't jump over the fence quickly enough, he's going to get a little bit of an electric shock to his paws. Yeah, I know. This is a study you couldn't do today. It's not nice to shock doggies because all dogs are good boys, even if they're girls. So you wire the floor with an electrical shock, and really quickly, the dog learns to jump over to the other side of the chamber to avoid a shock. So usually the lights will flicker, and then the dog will realize the shock's about to happen. They get really good avoiding that shock. So usually after the first trial, they never get shocked again. They're really quick to learn that if they go to this side of the chamber, they're not getting shocked. So they jump over quickly. Now, Seligman looked at something a little bit different. What if you put a dog in a situation where they don't have an opportunity to escape? So these dogs were getting shocked, and there was nothing they could do to stop them. The fence was too tall, they couldn't escape, so they're constantly getting shocked every single trial, over and over and over again. Yeah, I'm really glad we don't do this anymore. And so you spend a lot of time in this period where the dog is repeatedly getting shocked over and over again. And then you set up a situation where the dog can basically have the option to escape, just like before. But here's what happens if you expose that dog to uncontrollable shocks that he can't escape, and then you give the dog an opportunity to escape. They won't. They will lie on the floor of the cage or of the shuttle box or the cage, wherever they're being kept in, and they will whimper. They will repeatedly get shocked over and over again, and they will not try to escape, even though they now have the opportunity to. So this is what Martin Seligman referred to as learned helplessness. He originally found it in dogs, but we do also tend to find that it happens in humans in a very different sort of way. But the underlying principles are still the same. If you are exposed to uncontrollable stress repeatedly, some people do develop a sense of learned helplessness. They develop a passive resignation to life. They do not try to fix what's stressing them out. They just feel like they deserve this. This is their fate. They can't control it. They can't stop it, so they take it. And a lot of this learned helplessness can happen in situations like depression. And this can actually trigger health problems. We know that having a sense of control, or at least feeling like you control some aspects of your environment, can improve your health and it can improve your outlook. And I think for a lot of people, the reason that the pandemic has been so difficult is because there's a lot that's not in your control. You can't control whether everybody around you wears a mask. You can't control what other people do. You can't control whether or not your state decides to close things down. And if things close things down, all the things that you had to do for fun aren't there for a little while. So it's really, really easy to feel like there's no control. So it's really important to find things, even small things, that you feel like you have a sense of control over, because that can improve your health and it can improve your outlook. Another thing that seems to play a role in terms of how well we cope with stress is what we call our locus of control. So do things that happen to you, do they happen to you because of your own effort, or because you were just lucky, or because it's fate, or the universe is against you? So generally, if you have an internal locus of control, you believe that what happens to you is a product and a consequence of your own efforts. On the other hand, if you have what is called an external locus of control, this means that what happens to you is a product of something outside of yourself. It could be a supernatural power. It could be the universe. It could be luck. It could be fate. It could be chance. And we know that people with an internal locus of control tend to cope with stress a lot better because they believe that they can change the outcome. Now, can you always change the outcome? No, but having a sense that you can control certain aspects of the situation and that you can change your fate seems to give people a sense of hopefulness. Now, self-control also seems to play a role. People who have higher senses of self-control seem to manage their stress better. Now, the great part is that self-control and willpower acts just like a muscle. The first time that you use it, it's probably not going to be very good, but the more you use it, the stronger you get, just like my arm. I lift a lot, what can I say? So it kind of works like a muscle. If you use it, it gets strengthened. If you don't, it's going to go away. Now, one other thing that I want to talk about that plays a role is a sense of optimism. In general, people who are more optimistic tend to handle stress much better. They also reportedly tend to be less sick, and they also tend to have better longevity. They tend to live longer. Now, remember, many of these are correlated, not causal. Take them with a massive grain of salt. Now, having said that, though, a sense of realism is really important. Nothing is worse than being an optimist who is constantly disappointed. That's me a lot. I'm like, I expect the best out of people. Well, you're going to be disappointed sometimes. So having a sense of realism can be incredibly important. It can help prepare you for challenges, and it can also prepare you for certain types of risks. So if I'm super optimistic, but I don't have a sense of realism, I can be like, sure, I'll get on an airplane and go to a really crowded area and breathe all over a bunch of people and not wear a mask. I'm going to be fine. I mean, you might, but do you really want to take that risk? Maybe not right now. Maybe in a year or two. Social support also is vital. Feeling liked and appreciated by others really, really helps us cope. Even having a pet has been found to lower your blood pressure. Having somebody that you care for and cares about you is enough to often lower your blood pressure. We also know that social support has positive effects on the body and the immune system. Research actually has found that when you do fMRIs on people who are holding hands of people that they know and care about versus strangers, you get more beneficial effects, you get more activation in the brain, and you get better immune system functioning. So if you can hug certain people, like do that. If you can't, give them a virtual hug. And the other reason that social support is so important is that it gives us an opportunity to confide in other people and find a sense of purpose or meaning in our lives. All right, managing our feelings of stress, like right now, or really any point this year. and even last year, and maybe next year, because no one's life is stress-free. And hey, you're kind of pulling a face. Remember that good things can be stressful too. Good things can be stressful too. I love Christmas. Christmas is still stressful. So one of the things that I have to recommend, does anybody here watch Legally Blonde? Exercise gives you endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Say the rest. Happy people just don't shoot their husbands. They just don't. Okay. So one of the things that we know is that exercise is a great way to manage stress. Now, I want to be really, really clear. Oftentimes when I hear people talking about exercise giving a lot of stress busting benefits, it's often framed in this weird, you don't need pills to help with your depression, just go get some exercise. You don't need a pill to manage your anxiety, you just need some exercise. Let me break this down for you. Some people need medication to help manage their stuff, because sometimes you could be doing all the right things and sometimes that's not enough. So when I started having issues with my anxiety, I was doing all the right things. I do exercise, I was journaling, I was reading books, I was meditating. And there was a point where I'm like, I can't do this on my own. I need therapy, and I might need to go on medication for a little bit. And I did for about a year, and then I didn't need it anymore. And I went off it safely with a physician's advice. So this is not me saying exercise can help you cure you of your depression. I'm not saying that. You might need a little extra help, but really, I think everybody should move their body, because in a way that is fun and challenging for you. We first of all know that aerobic exercise increases cardiovascular fitness, and that's always going to be a good thing. And there is kind of a causal link here with respect to managing stress and mood. So what you're looking at here is a study of depressed college students, and you can kind of see that when they were evaluated before treatment, they were all kind of around the same range for depression scores. We have a group that gets relaxation treatments, a group that gets no treatment, and a group with aerobic exercise. Now, the chart says that exercise reduces depression. It very well might, but really do exercise because it's a really good stress buster, and you get an opportunity to make your body a little bit healthier. It's a win-win situation. And again, I am not telling you that if you're depressed that exercise will solve all of your problems. I think it's one thing that you can do. For some people, you might need more, and that's okay. Relaxation and meditation. And I am all about the relaxation and meditation. There's an app called 10% Happier. I recently completed an election sanity challenge that had nothing to do with politics, but it was all about how to meditate and manage your feelings during a very stressful time. Relaxation and meditation can relieve many, many health symptoms. It can also reduce your heart attack risk. So what you're looking at here are people who have had a heart attack before, and we have a control group. And we have lifestyle modification patients. So the control patients were told, eat better and exercise. The lifestyle modification patients were told, eat better and exercise, but also do things to manage your stress and engage in relaxation techniques. And as you can kind of see, the lifestyle modification patients did reduce the chances of future heart attacks. And then finally, and here's where we're going to close, we do tend to find that for whatever reason, spirituality or religious attendance is actually associated with less stress. Now, there have been a lot of ideas as to why this is. Is it because some religions encourage dietary restrictions, like certain food restrictions or health restrictions, and thus have a healthier lifestyle? Is going to a church or a temple associated with greater social support? And really, it doesn't seem to be this that is the issue. What we do find is that what religion seems to encourage for a lot of people is a sense of certainty. People are generally not very good at managing uncertainty. And so if you have a religious faith or a spiritual idea of the world, it encourages a very stable view of the world, and it encourages a sense of certainty. It also may provide a sense of hopefulness and acceptance, and at least for certain types of religions, for example, certain progressive denominations of Christianity do actually engage in meditation and centering prayer, and those can also potentially encourage that. But if you are not religious, that's okay. There are a lot of other ways to manage your stress that do not involve walking into a church. All right, folks, so that is all I had. We will have our review session on Sunday at 8 o'clock. That will be filmed. I will see you then. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the nice weather. Make good decisions. Don't lick doorknobs.